Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have just pulled down Donna Fiducia's microphone, and that's because I'm Don Neuen. And I would like to welcome you to tonight's really big Cowboy Logic show. Tonight is going to be absolutely riveting, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to first introduce and thank my sponsors, LaGrange Toyota, for allowing me to drive around every day in a beautiful hybrid Camry.
They're not
I would also
sponsoring
like
anything.
to
You're
sponsor
paying for that.
the Bowden Pawn Shop that provides me with free weapons so I can drive into the city of Atlanta every day feeling safe and secure while I exercise my Second Amendment rights. Next, I would like to thank Kroger in Carrollton, Georgia, for providing me with free food, all that I want, an open account, carte blanche. I can go in there and purchase anything I would like at absolutely no cost.
Now I know you're lying.
And I would like to thank
Milano's
Pizza for providing me with unlimited supplies of Italian food anytime I drive down to that restaurant. Back to you, Donna.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. Your head is hotter than a telephone wire. You buy all your groceries. You pay for that Toyota from LaGrange Toyota, and quite a hefty bit every month, I might add, for another 2 years before it's mine.
Yeah.
And then you get another new one.
Yeah,
Put another 50,000 miles a year on it. You
Tony Bag of Donuts at Bowden Pawn.
Yes.
He's never given me a free weapon, although I must say that is where we buy all of our weapons.
He gives you good breaks, though.
He does.
And he really knows
And
about
he's a great
guns.
guy.
Yep.
And
big Tony Bag of Donuts.
and
Tony
the
Bag of
entire
Donuts.
time that we were supporting Ted Cruz, he just gave me a bunch of crap.
He was a trumper from day one.
He was a trumpeter.
We did argue about that, but he was right.
He won, and we conceded.
Yes. And in a way, I'm kind of liking what we have to work with here.
Hey,
Speaking of which...
wait a minute. Before we get into anything of news, any news you want to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, seriously, let me welcome you to Big Cowboy Logic Radio Show tonight. We want to, again, extend our gratitude and our thanks to our networks and our affiliates. Our digital network is Talk America Radio, found at talkamericaradio.us. Many of you may know that a little over a week and a half ago, the owner of Talk America Radio, Ron Phillips, and his family suffered a rather devastating event that took place in their lives, and that was that their home was a direct hit from a lightning bolt. And it caught the entire top of the house on fire, and then that caught other things on fire, and then where water damage and smoke damage.
And the fire department had to... It's gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a year before they're going to be able to move back into their house again. Well, if that wasn't bad enough, that's where the digital network, Talk America Radio, was housed. Mm-hmm. And it was housed on like 4 or 5 computers in Ron's big radio studio that he's got there. And that's why the Liberty and the Justice streams are currently down. Now, Ron and his family and Matt Locke, who is down in Texas right now.
The conservative cartel.
Yep. Are working feverishly with the insurance adjusters and all of the insurance people that are trying to get things back up and running. And so we just ask that you be patient. If you go to talkamericaradio.us, you will see the player, the pop-up player that we have. And on that pop-up player, you've got 6 radio streams, 6 different stations. You've got the Liberty stream and the Justice stream. Those 2 right now are dark. Actually, they're not dark. We've got Donna for 2 minutes talking about the fact that they're dark.
and where to go otherwise.
Yeah, and you've also got the WDFP stream, which is a partial list of the programming that we have at Talk America Radio. Mm-hmm. So you've got some of the programming, including Cowboy Logic Radio. Mm-hmm. But you can also visit WDDQ, Talk 92.1 out of Valdosta, Georgia. That station is on our player. WJHC 107.5 out of Jasper, Florida. And then WLBB 1330 106.3 FM out of Carrollton, Georgia. So we're kind of like your one-stop shop for any radio that you want to listen to. So let's all do our best to keep the Ron Phillips family in our prayers, and that they're going to be able to get their lives back together, because I can't imagine how that was upended.
The big blessing was that they all got out okay, because it was 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And luckily they were up and they heard it. They went up to check and they saw the fire and they got everybody the heck out. We should stress, by the way, that WLBB also is on, you did mention it, but I want to stress it, 106.3 FM now, as well as 1330 AM out of Carrollton, Georgia. But that 106.3 can be heard. It's a monster.
I was listening to this in Douglasville, Georgia, Donna.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, awesome. I listened to 106.3 as I was coming home almost for an hour. Mm-hmm. That's impressive, Steve Graddick. And the fact that Steve Graddick came to me and said, Don NEUEN, I want you and Cowboy Logic Radio and Donna Fiducia can come along on my station so badly that I'm going to build an FM tower. I am so flattered that he did that. Aren't you, Donna?
Liar, liar, pants on fire. Your head is hotter than a telephone wire. Or in this case, a
I'm
radio
just
wire.
kidding, ladies and gentlemen. But you know what? It sure does make me feel good when I say stuff like that.
All right. Can we get started here?
Back to you, Donna.
I want to follow the money trail. I know everybody's talking about Mueller, and we're going to be talking to Sidney Powell coming up after the break. Sidney, by the way, was just on Shannon Bream's new show at 11 o'clock on the Fox News Channel.
On Monday.
Yep, on Monday.
And this
Fox
morning,
and Friends this morning.
I like the outfit on Shannon Bream's show better. I like the pink.
Well,
I got to be honest.
Tell you, Sidney knows her stuff, and that's why she is the go-to person for all stuff pertaining to special counsels and the Department of Justice. She has worked under both administrations, actually Republicans and Democrats. But she is an attorney and author of License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. Now, Newt Gingrich mentioned her book about a month or so ago when he was on with Hannity, and it shot up to the New York Times.
I think she sold 11 trillion copies of it after that show.
And the book's been out for a while. But she really knows her stuff, and
she is
proved
awesome.
It on Shannon Bream's show last night, and we're going to have her on.
You know what I'd like to see, Donna?
What?
I would like to see Sidney Powell as the prosecutor.
Yeah.
And Tom Del Beccaro with a gray, long ponytail acting like a defense attorney.
He doesn't have a gray, long ponytail.
I know, but I'd like to see that.
We'll be talking to him at the end of the show, but we're going to be talking about taxes.
And I'd like to see Gene Baradelli as the judge.
Oh, gosh.
Judge Gene.
As opposed to Judge Janine. It'd be Judge Gene.
Man, am I funny.
God. All right. Let's follow the money trail. All right. We all know Mueller's been indicted, and we're going to talk about that with Sidney Powell and this other little worm, Snuffleupagus, who might have been wearing a wire, and that's fine, too. A 30-year-old that the Russians basically...
George Papilloma.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Anyhow, I want
You weren't ready for that, were you, Donna?
That's a virus, isn't it?
I think so.
I want to know where $145 million
I bet you
went.
do.
Okay. Well, we know where it went. It went to the Clinton Foundation for, in return, 20% of our uranium going to the Russians. Let me ask, let's play Q&A here, Mr. NEUEN.
Oh, am I going to answer questions?
You're going to answer my questions.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to see if I know anything.
And folks
Or
out
we're
there,
going to find out if I'm paying attention to Donna when she asks these questions.
No, what I want you to think of, if you're listening out there, folks, did you hear this on the mainstream media? Okay?
All right, so you're going to ask me some questions.
Well, I actually only have one big question for you to answer.
Ooh, the pressure's on.
The pressure
I'm
is
either
on.
going to fail or pass.
Okay. First of all, well, if you were just listening, how much money was spent on Uranium One?
$145 million.
Okay. And
So am I 1 for 1?
that 1 for 1.
Okay.
How much United States uranium went to the Russians? What percentage
20%.
went to the Russians?
So I'm 2 for 2.
Very good. Bing, 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 bing. Who delivered a sample of uranium to the Russians to be inspected?
He was one of a few, but it was Robert Mueller.
Bing, 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 bing.
Don't
the plot
don't try to
thickens,
pin
folks.
all of that on Mueller, but he was there.
Well, that's a hell of a lot bigger connection with the Russians than Donald Trump, don't you think?
Well, I know that
And he's
I didn't deliver it.
And he's and
Okay,
Trump
so I'm
didn't
3 for
either.
3. Keep going.
Okay, and Trump is being investigated. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, how
Yeah,
much did Bill Clinton also get for speaking fees?
$500,000.
Yeah, that's.
And I'm 4 for 4.
You are very.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Don Neuen, and I'm overly intelligent.
This is a subversion of our national security, not what Donald Trump did with 3 months with Paul
completely
Manafort.
agree that this is a massive breach of national security.
Finally, the House Intelligence Committee is looking into Uranium One. It's about time they grow a pair down there in D.C. You rhinos.
What do you mean by a pair?
Use your imagination. Now, the
Could
budget
be a
for the
pair of aces. Could be a
no. The budget
pickled
for
pears.
Mueller's
pair
investigation.
of doves. Could be a what is it on in the Christmas song about pear?
2 turtle doves
Pair of 2 turtle doves.
and a partridge in a pear tree.
Oh, pear. That's right. Pear tree.
Yes, there you go.
Back to you, Donna.
Well, we're going to ask Sydney about this too. The budget review for Mueller's investigation is up next month. I just think it's kind of curiouser and curiouser how he has to justify his existence as far as doing this just before. I want to know how many.
You just
tens
don't
of
like
millions.
Mueller, do you?
No, he's the FBI director. Okay, he's the FBI
And what kind of
director when
pasta
all
do
this was
we
going
eat?
down.
Borelli?
No, we don't eat Mueller's pasta.
Well, that's
Yeah,
right.
we do.
What
Borelli.
kind?
Borelli.
Borelli. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. One more fun fact.
Barilla pasta.
Barilla.
whatever they- I look at the box all the time. I think I'd remember.
And then we clean the pan with a Barilla pad. Look at the size of that cricket.
I know there's a huge cricket family that we've disrupted because we had to do some work in the ceiling that goes to the,
Why do they
crawl
come down
space.
here?
Because they came in through the crawl space. There's a whole family of
Very
them now.
interesting. Look at him go.
He's very fast. Jimmy,
Hey, listen, I need to remind everybody that I'm Don Neuen. Back to you, Donna.
my other question is, where is the IRS here? We've talked to Charles Ortel quite a bit about following the money trail with the
You
Clinton
talk
Foundation.
to Charles Ortel every night.
That's
What are you
because
talking
he
about?
wants to
We
find
talk
out
to
what
him
I'm
every
eating.
once in a while.
Well, he business once in a while. Every night he calls me to ask me what I'm making for dinner, though, because I'm the only Italian in the world that really can't cook. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
you can cook. I am going to run to your defense on this.
Well, I'm getting better.
Ladies and gentlemen, we order, what's it called?
Blue Apron.
Blue Apron.
Yep.
And Donna has made me a healthy eater.
Trying.
No,
I got
you're
him to
doing
eat
it.
Kale.
You're
eat
doing
kale.
it. I eat kale Yarboroughs. No, I do eat kale, although she made it the other day and it wasn't cooked.
It was kale slaw. That was
Donna, I got to be honest, that sucked terribly.
Well, that had mayonnaise in it. I can see it's kind of
I couldn't.
tart.
It wouldn't chew.
Yeah, it's kind of like chewing velvet.
It's like sticking a big wad of tobacco in my mouth and just.
Well, you do that.
Well, yeah,
So
but
you should be
I don't
used
want to
to it.
do that when I'm sitting down to eat.
Can I get back to the news?
No, I
don't
want to
know
talk
where I
about
am
Blue
here.
Apron. Donna, tonight Donna made some delicious pork chops. Those were wonderful. What were they called?
They were, I don't know, pork chops, something or other. They give it some fancy name.
We got
Had it
done with
rubbed.
it, and I helped cook, and I had way too much time on my hands.
That would be THYME. That's so bad.
That's pretty good, don't you think, Donna?
Yeah,
that's
very
pretty good. Hey, did any of you guys see the video that I posted on Facebook this past
Don't
weekend?
even bring that up. Don't even bring that up.
Why?
Because that's really in poor taste.
It was not.
It is too.
No, it was not.
I think it was.
It's
So
a thing
just-
about nature. I wanted to post a nature video that would be educational.
It was one of our horses who had amorous feelings toward another one of our horses. That's pretty.
Go to my Facebook page. We can't talk about it on the air, ladies and gentlemen.
No,
Donna's right. It is a very sensitive subject, but it had to do with one of our mares that's in heat and two geldings that seemed like they thought they could do something when in actuality they're much like a navel orange. All the juice and no seeds.
You're going to get us in trouble.
I am not.
All right, can I get back to what Charles Ortel and I did actually talk about?
Wasn't even aware you were talking about Charles Ortel.
What's when I went to Blue Apron?
I'm kidding. I know that.
Okay. Where is the IRS here? The IRS has not audited the Clinton Foundation in almost 20 years, and it's supposed to every year. All right? And we do know that Hillary Clinton and the Clinton campaign paid Russian operatives to dig up dirt on Donald Trump, okay, via Christopher Steele.
And the DNC.
Right. And the DNC.
$12 million.
And then Hillary says, gee, I don't know where that went.
Well, that's fine, Hillary.
and then-
It's okay if you're senile. Let's go to the bank records.
But
What do you say we do that?
But she's the world's smartest woman. She's supposed to know everything. She doesn't. She seems
That's
to forget
fine.
very conveniently.
That's
whenever
fine.
needed.
I think Congress needs to take her answer and say, thank you, Miss Clinton. Let's take a look at the bank records.
They are going to look into it, even though Perkins Coie, the law firm, said, well, it's attorney-client privilege. They essentially laundered the money, in my opinion. I'm sure that's going to come out, but that's just my gut feeling because I follow the money trail. And
Follow
by the way,
the money trail.
Speaking of that, we are going to talk to an author by the name of William HAZELGROVE. He wrote a book called Al Capone in the 1933 World's Fair. We're going to be talking to him at the top of the hour, next hour. Al Capone got caught on taxes. I think that's the only thing that's going to catch this latest Al Capone. That would be the Clinton Foundation.
Well, I believe, and we've been saying this now for years, that the Achilles heel, or in my case, the Achilles tendon, with the Clintons is the Clinton Foundation.
Yep.
I think that's going to be the way to get them.
Yep. The whole thing is, and if you hear the spin that, oh, it's the Republicans that first hired Fusion GPS, yes, that's true. And it was for Marco Rubio's campaign. He had a big money donor that hired Fusion GPS to basically get some opposition research, which is done on a regular basis.
And there's a big difference between opposition research and this dossier.
Absolutely. Because then what happened is, after Rubio and Bush dropped out, the Washington Free Beacon said, okay, that's it, we're done. Well, then all of a sudden, Fusion GPS or somebody hired, whether Fusion GPS went to the DNC or Hillary or vice versa, that remains to be seen. But there was a connection there, and dirt still kept trying to be dug up to the tune of some, let's say, $9 to $12 million. There are some people have said it's been at least $12 million. And then it was funneled through this Perkins Coie law firm, and they're saying, well, because of attorney-client privilege, we can't say where it's coming from, but Congress can, and apparently they are going to subpoena these records.
Well, and here's something else you got to remember about this dossier.
What?
This is typical Russian MO. Okay,
Modus operandi?
Yeah, you got snippets that are validated facts. Snippets, like 5%. Very few of them. Most of the dossier is false. And again, this is a Russian tactic. You list the facts, and then you add in a bunch of bogus, wild stuff to create chaos. And that's exactly what they do.
But they've been doing that. I mean, this is what Hillary Clinton wrote her thesis on, too. Saul Alinsky, creating chaos. And the thing is, the best defense is good offense. Everything the Clinton Foundation, the DNC, Hillary Clinton, and their ilk have said Donald Trump has done, it's been actually the opposite. They have done it themselves. At least that's what's coming out now. And it's about time, as I said, Congress looks into this. And they are, finally.
Here's something real important. And Donna, we talked about this on Saturday when we appeared on the Conservative Cartel that's on the Blaze Radio Network with Rocky Stucci and Matt Locke. This FBI informant, he does have evidence. The gag order's been lifted. Now, he went to the FBI many times asking, why is this all happening with this dossier? Okay? It doesn't make any sense to him. And the FBI agents told him, hey, look, man, we're as mad about this as you are, but it really just comes down to politics. Higher powers are squashing this. Mm-hmm. Now, who are those higher powers? CFIUS. CFIUS. And that stands for the Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States. This is a group of people, 12, 13 members, that included Eric Holder, Hillary Clinton, Timothy Geithner, and others from the Obama administration.
Why do those names keep coming back?
Well, and the Obama White House was getting both official and unofficial daily briefings on this whole thing.
Ooh, you can't mess with the precious. You got to protect the precious. That would be Barack Obama.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with
yeah.
that. Meanwhile, as the plot continues to thicken, there's a guy named Dana Boente. He resigned late Friday. This is just starting to get reported. Well, he was the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. It appears that since the gag order was lifted, Boente resigned. That's a gag order, okay. He was also the number 2 guy in charge of the National Security Division of the DOJ. He took Sally Yates's place. He was in charge of the Russian investigation looking into WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and he was also an Obama appointee. He also worked with Preet Bharara, who was the first U.S. attorney that
Very
Trump
bad
fired.
guy.
Right. So the plot thickens on
No
that.
likey Trumpy.
Why would he resign? That's very interesting, too. And that's not even getting reported yet.
Why did Tony Podesta resign?
Yeah, really.
Why would he do that?
Gee, you think the Podesta group might? Well, I know Mueller, as much as I can't stand him, is looking into the Podesta group, too. He has to. He has to justify. Here's what I think is happening. This really, I believe, and Trump is right in this case, is bigger than Watergate. This is going to be the story of the century.
This could be epic.
And these people
Could be.
that are part of this, these players, now want to come down on the right side of history.
Speaking of Podestas, I have to tell you people very quickly, and we've only got about 30, 40 seconds left here. The other day I was walking around the tractor, Donna. You didn't see this. And I was about to go out and dump a whole bucket load of horse poop. Mm-hmm. And I bumped my shin into the side of that tractor bucket. And I had the biggest Podesta show up on my shin. And you know what I did? I came up here, I put a hot compress on it, and then I put some balm and salve on it. It took about 3 days for that Podesta to go away.
It'd be nice if the other Podesta would go away that fast. That's
Who we got coming up, Big Donna Fiducia?
Well, we are going to talk to the aforementioned Sidney Powell, author of License to Lie, exposing the corruption in the DOJ, just off her appearance on Shannon Bream's show on the Fox News Channel, the debut
and
show.
earlier this morning on, what is it, Fox and Friends, the
Friends
bookend show with the two guys and the girl in the middle.
Yeah, that's true. And William
Which you were on. You were the girl in the middle.
Yeah, many, many years ago. William Hazelgrove, author Al Capone and the 1933 World's Fair.
Wait to talk to him.
As we continue to look at more corruption and more tax evasion, that's what's going to get these people, I think. And we're going to wind up with Tom Del Beccaro.
Can't wait to talk to Tom Del Beccaro. And you know what? He's already called me twice wanting to know if he can come on early with us. I said, Tom, calm down, man.
Well, he's got to wait because we're going to talk taxes with Tom because he's a Forbes contributor. He knows about all this stuff, and therefore, we want to get his take on the tax plan if it ever gets pushed through.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to see Tom Del Beccaro with gray hair and a ponytail being a defense lawyer someplace. We'll be right back.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hey, Chris, thanks for helping me out here.
No problem, Donna. Anything I can do to help the cause, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so you have the script, right?
Yep, got it.
And you got the check for $200, right?
Yep, got it.
Okay, let me count you down. 3, 2, 1.
Hi, this is Chris X from Chris X Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel compelled to tell you about my favorite radio talk host in the entire surface of the earth. It's Don NEUEN, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio. Don, are you serious?
Just read the script, Chris. You've been paid.
Okay, all right. Not Rush Limbaugh, not Mark Levin, not Sean Handy, not even Donna Fiducia.
Hey, I didn't write this. Don did. Come on, Chris. Look at it like it's a quick $200.
Okay, Don NEUEN, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, is a seasoned intellectual ahead of the curve, engaging, mind-stimulating, extremely entertaining. Don NEUEN is the complete package.
Don't worry, Chris. We can edit this.
Oh, thank God. Copy that. All right, catch Don NEUEN, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, my favorite talk radio host, right here on Talk America Radio. Check the schedules for showtimes at talkamericaradio.us.
All right, thanks, Chris. Now spend that $200 quickly before Don realizes it's missing out of his checking account.
I will.
ATA Digital Dallas. Talk America Radio.
Hi, this is Michelle Malkin from CRTV.com, and you're listening to Talk America Radio.
Accuracy and range are a necessity. Now comfort is an option as well. Nemo Arms introduces the Omen 300 Win Mag. The Omen 300 is perfectly balanced for reduced recoil, creating sub-minute of angle accuracy. And fit for the tightest of tolerances. The Omen is offered in carbine or full-length models with a 10 or 14-round magazine. American-made, owned, and designed, Nemo Arms is setting a new standard in modern sporting rifles. Find out more at NemoArms.com.
Hi, this is Dr. Kelly Ward from the great state of Arizona, and you're listening to Talk America Radio, the new dominant force in conservative talk radio.
I lost my brother Frank in the Battle of Iwo Jima.
He served on 4 combat tours in Vietnam, in Iraq, Afghanistan. There's a life that was lost behind that pin.
I put it on for my wife,
For my husband,
My brother,
my dad.
my son.
we wear it because we honor those that we lost.
To learn more about the stories behind the Gold Star Pins, visit goldstarpins.org.
This is Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan, Vietnam vet and Fox News contributor, and you're listening to Talk America Radio at talkamericaradio.us.
Hey, everybody, they're back on again.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts when their hearts were filled with memories, bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
And welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don NEUEN.
And I'm Don NEUEN, and I was extraordinarily proud of our next guest last night. I was beaming.
Yes.
I was beaming with pride.
And she was also on, not only was she on the Fox News channel with Shannon Bream's debut show at 11 o'clock Monday night, Eastern Time, but she was also on Fox and Friends this morning.
Which I did not get up and watch. I did not get up in time to watch that.
It's pretty hard for me to get
But
up
I
to.
was
I'm not sure
beaming.
I did either.
I was beaming last night, Sidney Powell.
Yes. All right,
Thank
Sydney,
you so much. I really appreciate it.
No, it was good. Let me introduce you. You are an attorney and author of License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. That aforementioned book and your experience is why you were on with Shannon Bream last night and why you were on Fox News Channel on Tuesday morning, because you know all about the corruption in the Department of Justice. And boy, do we have so much to talk about with this Manafort indictment and everything else. So, Sidney Powell, you can find her book, by the way, folks, at Licensed to Lie. That's licensedtolie.com. Okay, you're the first guest on Shannon Bream's show. at 11 o'clock now, Monday nights on the Fox News Channel, which means you're the big cheese. I mean, that's really, really cool. And the thing is...
I love the pink. I love the pink.
Thank you.
But if
I was taking pictures of the TV,
yes,
Sydney.
He was. He took a screenshot of the TV. All right, so...
I took 6 screenshots of the TV. Thank you, Donna.
Well, you only sent me one, and I sent that to Sydney.
Probably because all the others, my eyes were closed. I'm going to get toothpicks for them from now on.
Yeah, really.
Well, you're going to... All right, so let's do this. Please educate us on what happened Monday morning. Well, what happened last week, but came to fruition Monday morning.
Well, the special counsel got a 12-count indictment, I think it is, against Paul Manafort and his colleague and associate Gates. I think it's Richard Gates. And it basically charges 2 conspiracy counts, one very general conspiracy, which they banner headline as a conspiracy against the United States. And then there's a conspiracy to commit money laundering. They never really charge money laundering, and most of it seems to boil down to false statements in bank reporting things, like they had foreign bank accounts, and there's a federal statute that says you're supposed to report foreign bank accounts both on your tax returns and that they exist to the banks, I think. And then there's a plain false statement count. And then there are a couple of other different kinds of false statement counts.
All right, but
it talks about a lot of different things. It talks about failing to report things on his tax return, but there's not a tax count. It's an interesting amalgamation of a lot of different things. One of the statements that really bothered me was a statement that he had made a false statement to his attorneys. Now, why in the Sam Hill they have any communications between him and his attorneys, which should be attorney-client privileged, is very disturbing to me. And there are just a lot of things in there, the way it's written and the way it's charged, that I think could probably be picked apart. They go on and on about different shell corporations he had. Well, anyone who's running any kind of business is going to use multiple different corporations for liability purposes and accounting purposes. And there are all kinds of different reasons to use different corporations. I had a business friend in Dallas years ago who, when he died, there were like 120 corporations that had to be terminated. And he'd never done a thing wrong in his life. So, they make a lot of things sound bad that may have, and I would expect to have, very simple explanations.
Do you think that the intent of these indictments was to give Manafort a slap on the wrist, some community service, maybe? No. I mean, you think they're going to try to put him away?
Oh, yeah. I think it's just a shot across the bow. The way other things are referenced in the indictment, they could come up with a superseding indictment charging a lot more offenses if what they say bears out in the evidence. And I would expect them to just squeeze the daylights out of him to try to get him to say whatever they want him to say. And that doesn't mean necessarily what the truth is. In fact, if you look at Mr. Weissman's history detailed in License to Lie, he had no regard for the truth whatsoever. I mean, he made up indictments against Arthur Andersen and destroyed that company and 85,000 jobs, only to be reversed by a unanimous Supreme Court 3 years later, with Justice Rehnquist writing for the majority. That was shocking how little criminal culpability the jury instructions required, and that Andersen had no fair warning that its conduct was illegal. I mean, he pieced together parts of different statutes to make a crime out of something that wasn't. And he did the same thing with 4 Merrill Lynch executives. They went to prison for a year. And on top of that, in the Merrill Lynch case, he hid evidence that showed they were innocent. They'd actually yellow highlighted evidence before the trial that they knew jolly well was favorable to the defense. It contradicted their witnesses. It contradicted their own arguments to the jury. It contradicted all of their evidence, and they hid it for 6 years. It was only by accident that our defense team ever uncovered it 6 years later.
How does he have a license still?
Well, Bill Hodes, one of the leading legal ethics experts in the country, filed a grievance against him with the New York bar, and I signed on to it too. But Bill pulled the laboring oar on it, and he's very highly regarded. Well, the New York bar, Weissman was defended on those charges by the Department of Justice at the time because he was already working for Mueller and the FBI. He was special counsel and then general counsel, deputy director of the FBI. So DOJ was defending him on it. In the middle of the night, without telling us, the New York bar sends it to the Office of Professional Responsibility at the Department of Justice to decide whether Mr. Weissman has done anything wrong, while the Department of Justice is saying he didn't.
Oh, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Sidney Powell, author of License to Lie. You can find that at licensetolie.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, licensetolie.com. License to Lie, the entire book is called License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. I guess we can start with Andrew Weissman.
All right, well, let me ask you this, Sidney. There's another little player in these indictments that ended up getting popped a while back. I don't know, it was 3-6 months ago, whatever. George Snuggalopoulous, whatever his name is.
Papadopoulos.
Yeah.
Papadopoulos, I love that name.
Papacitos.
It's a great Greek name.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, Mr. Papadopoulos was apparently a 30-year-old volunteer on the Trump campaign who wanted to contribute somehow in the area of foreign policy. And basically, he was played by the Russians. He ran into a Russian professor somewhere that realized he had a connection with the Trump campaign and started playing him like a fiddle.
All right. Now, you said something last night on Shannon Bream's show that the only other person that I've heard say this was Denise Simon in a Monday night sit rep that I got from her, in which there's chatter, and you were a lot more specific and direct than the word chatter, but this guy may have been wired. He may have been a plant.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they called him a proactive or something. I forgot the exact word they used, but there's in the statement of the offense and the documents they filed related to his plea of guilty to a false statement count, it indicates that he has been very active in cooperating with the government, and that's like code language for they've had him wired or been having him make phone calls that they've recorded, no telling what. So anybody that's talked to him since I think it was July 27th, has been taped. You can pretty much bet on it.
And was he a plant by the Russians or by the Democrat Party or both?
Oh, who knows? I mean, that we may never even find that out.
I mean, could Mueller
for those phone calls, since he was arrested, it would be Mueller that's taping it.
All right, I tend to follow the money trail, Sidney Powell,
which we're about to get into here with
Uranium One.
Yeah,
but before that, the money for Mueller's investigation and whether it's going to be the funding is going to continue or not has to be okayed by Congress. And that is coming up in the next couple of weeks. I just find the timing very curious because it seems to me like he's trying to justify his existence here.
Well, I predicted long ago that there would be indictments before Thanksgiving, if for no other reason than Andrew Weissman loves to ruin people's holidays.
What a jerk! I'm sorry.
And he has.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But the only thing that surprised me about this was that they did not go arrest them, and I think maybe it's because I've been screaming bloody murder about Weissman's abusive and high-handed tactics. Maybe Mueller has decided to not be so horrible in all things and allow them to voluntarily report, because that's exactly what should have happened. They surrendered themselves, and, that was bad enough.
Wow.
Sidney Powell, let me ask you this. I've got very good friends that are debating this, and I'm kind of waiting to sit back. I've got my own views on it. But what are your thoughts on whether or not Trump should fire Mueller? And if he does, is that going to be a final nail in his coffin, and the left would run with this, the media would run with it, and there would be no possible win? What are your thoughts on that?
I think he should just let the course of proceedings proceed and see what happens.
So you agree that if he were to can him, that would be...
It would start a firestorm that's probably not needed.
Exactly.
Kind of like what he did with the NFL.
Yeah, but that one's kind of interesting because the more they protest, the worse they make it for themselves. And I think most Americans would rather see them play football than protest.
Exactly.
I mean, they just
I would rather have watched
politics.
Yeah.
I much rather watched Sidney Powell on Monday night than Monday Night Football.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what I did. Sidney, one other follow-up question to that, and then I don't want to hog the airtime here between Donna and I. A question that I ask the same people that I mentioned in the last question was, do you think that there's a possibility or even a probability that what Mueller is doing with setting up these indictments and then more to follow are going to be an absolute bombshell that's going to be set off with regard to the Democrat Party?
If he does it fairly, that could very well happen. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say good things about Mueller. I just have trouble believing that anybody that's supposedly that good would have Andrew Weissman as their right-hand person. And I don't know Mr. Weissman personally. He's probably a very nice guy to sit down and have dinner with. I don't know. But I know his record. I mean, I've seen the documents. I've been through them in painstaking detail to do the appeal. And for example, he had my client in front of the grand jury long before I came in the case. He told my client to share with him his personal understanding of a telephone call that my client was not even on. And he told him to share that personal understanding with the grand jury, whether it was accurate or not. He then indicted him for perjury and obstruction of justice for his answer.
So it's like he entraps people. And that's what it seems like they're trying to do with Trump. If this guy was wearing a wire, this Snuffleupagus was wearing a wire here. I mean, they were trying to entrap Trump, and it seems like they haven't gotten anywhere because Trump's name doesn't even come up right now in this indictment so far, and it's, tens of pages, 20, 30, 40 pages, I don't know. All right, but my bigger question, as far as Uranium One is concerned, is where was Mueller when he was FBI director? And if
he was taking a sample of the uranium himself to the Russians.
I know. So the fox is watching the hen house. Why is Mueller there?
From the get-go, he has got a greater conflict of interest by far in any sort of Russian misbehavior or conspiracy than Jeff Sessions has.
Yeah. So why is Mueller, why was he even appointed, first of all? And why at this point is nobody bringing this up? What is wrong with the DOJ? What is wrong with the Republican Party? They need to grow a pair here. This guy Mueller was the FBI director. So it's wrong on so many levels because he had to know as FBI director that this indictment was possible because he was working with the Podesta group. Manafort, I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Why it's not being talked about?
Wouldn't he, as FBI director, if he knew, have to go to Donald Trump, the candidate, or Comey for that matter, as the FBI director at the time, go to Donald Trump, the candidate, and say, you shouldn't hire this guy Manafort. He's got some international connections with Russians, and you don't want to go there. Isn't that, I mean, as a candidate, doesn't Trump have the right to know that? He would have no way otherwise.
Yeah, but that's not the role of the FBI. Am I correct, Sidney?
I don't know.
Correct.
The FBI does one thing, or they're supposed to do one thing: investigate. That's it.
Okay, but as a candidate, who is supposed to tell this candidate that they might have a guy with a conflict of interest here?
His handlers.
Well, so they didn't investigate Manafort any better than anybody else did.
Or Trump didn't listen.
Well, I don't know.
Or look at it this way. It's taken Mueller this many months, 17 lawyers, a federal grand jury, a pre-dawn raid of Manafort's house, and a 9-hour search, not to mention however many months of investigation and numbers of investigators they've had working on it to find these crimes that he has pinned on Manafort. And don't forget, this was a targeted operation. Manafort would not have been indicted had he not been Trump's campaign manager.
Exactly. Meanwhile, he's with the Podesta group.
Yeah,
and
but
Tony Podesta steps down from his own group today as well. And supposedly
and that's
Mueller's
very
looking at
interesting.
that. Mm-hmm.
Well, he ought to be looking at that because the Podesta group was the one doing the actual lobbying. You know, they're complaining in the indictment about Manafort and Gates doing all this lobbying. Well, I'm sure they thought that's what they had hired the Podesta group to do.
Right. So if the dossier came from the latter dossier number 2, I guess, came from the DNC and Hillary Clinton, now the DNC and Hillary say, well, we don't know where that $12 million came from to do this dirt on Trump, let alone the fact that it was illegal because it was with a foreign government. And they supposedly have that law firm, whatever the hell the name of the law firm is, that supposedly, I guess, laundered through it.
That's more of a money laundering count than I saw in the Manafort indictment.
It's unbelievable what's going on here, and nobody's talking about it. Mueller delivers uranium samples to the Russians, and he's investigating Trump. It's insanity.
Right.
I do need to make a point here. I need to make a point, and that is that, Donna, I think you mentioned something about, or Sydney, it may have been you, that it took Mueller 17 months or whatever to do this, or months and 17 lawyers or whatever it was.
Yeah, 17 lawyers and several months, and I don't know how many investigators, and yeah.
Well,
There's no way Trump could have found out all this.
I'm here to tell everybody that Denise Simon was calling out Paul Manafort almost the day Trump was elected.
She said he had conflicts of interest.
Yep. And by the way, Sydney, Denise Simon really wants you to appear on her show. And we told her, no can do this week. You're our girl.
She's got to wait till next week.
But seriously, just for the record, Denise Simon was bending my ear about Paul Manafort before I had any idea who he even was.
Really?
Yeah.
And she was saying, this guy is seriously bad news. Seriously bad news.
But there are
I think he actually volunteered to help the Trump campaign and did so without pay for several months.
But does that, you think he could have been a plant from the DNC?
I have no idea. There's nothing you can take at face value hardly anymore.
What's going to be interesting is to find out what time period the Podesta group was paying Manafort, and did that take place during Manafort's short term
it was
at
years
working?
Before.
No.
Before.
According to the indictment, Manafort was paying the Podesta group on behalf of the people in the Ukraine, in the center for whatever the Ukrainian thing was. Mm-hmm. And that ended in 2014, long before the Trump campaign ever started.
And the guy in Ukraine, the president that was successful, I guess Manafort was essentially helping his campaign, was in the back pocket, I'm sorry, Vladimir Putin had this guy in his back pocket. This was a Putin crony, essentially. So there's a connection there. And so you've got deep connections. There's when you're here's my other question, Sydney Powell.
Spit it out,
my
Donna.
brain is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Sydney, she's bouncing in her seat, Sydney.
$145 million changes hands, giving the Russians 20% of our uranium. Did the United States taxpayer get any of that money? No.
No,
Clinton
I'm sure it was
Foundation
used
did.
to pay for Bill Clinton's jet to Jeffrey, who's its private island.
Yeah, really. I mean,
with Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and all the other perverts.
How do they go?
How do you really feel about those guys?
Really. We're watching House of Cards now, too. I just can't. It's going to be tough going forward.
Hey, the guy's a great actor.
He is.
Maybe he's a pervert. He came out of the closet earlier this week.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that.
Yeah, good
In a
for
tweet.
him. In a tweet. Yeah. See, he wants to be just like Donald Trump.
Oh, God. This world is just going to hell in a handbasket. I'm sorry. My other question, we only have a couple minutes left, Sydney. It goes so fast. There was a leak that these indictments were coming down. That in and of itself is a felony.
I heard
correct?
it was from the grand jury. Now, am I right or wrong, Sydney Powell?
Well, I don't think it's a felony to leak the existence of an indictment. I mean, normally at some point before, if they are going to let the people surrender themselves, they will notify their lawyers. And, somebody might have said, yes, there's an indictment. If they'd actually leaked, factual information, that would be, information about the offenses or the testimony or, anything like that, that would be a much bigger problem. I'd have to go back and look at the rule on that to express it.
I had a little mouse named Denise Simon that tell me that came from the grand jury. That leak came from the grand jury.
I have another statement, though. This reporter from CNN, who supposedly has been on the cutting edge of all this and somehow is getting all this information, at one time worked at the Wall Street Journal with the founders of Fusion GPS, who also worked at the Wall Street Journal at the time. So these guys are all connected. Yes,
it's just so incestuous.
Yes.
Sydney Powell, please tell everyone
that's
how
why
they
Trump was elected, because everybody's sick of the whole incestuous Washington mess.
And now they're all upset because he's upsetting the apple cart and draining the swamp. I love it.
Sydney Powell, how do people find you on Twitter, on Facebook, on your website? How do they buy your book? How do they get an autographed copy of your book?
An autographed copy can be ordered through me at the Square online store or at www.licensetoli.com. Copies can be purchased through Amazon. And you follow me on Twitter at Sydney Powell, the number 1, and find me as a friend on Facebook. And like License to Lie on Facebook.
And see her on the Fox News channel. And see her on the Fox News channel, on Fox and Friends, and also on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Sydney Powell,
That's
you
right.
are awesome. That's all I got to say. You are awesome.
And if you
Thank
weren't
you,
going
Don
on
Neuewen,
Fox and Friends early in the morning, we'd have to have you on for a whole nother segment.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, who do we have coming up next, Donna?
Thank you, Sydney. Well, we've got a great show continuing, talk about corruption. We're going to be talking to author William Hazelgrove, author of the book Al Capone and the 1933 World's Fair. Speaking of Al Capone, there's one guy who couldn't avoid taxes. Maybe that's Hillary's problem coming up. That's all we can hope. And then, of course, we'll be closing the show with Tom Del Beccaro, talking about the Trump tax plan or lack thereof. It's all coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance, yes. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuewen, and this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don NEUEN. And
who's behaving, you should say.
You're behaving because we are going to talk to an author and somebody we've never had on the show before, so he's not used to your blurting your name out.
I don't want him to think I'm a schmuck right out of the gate.
No, he can think of that maybe in the second or third interview, but not for the first one.
Right.
So therefore, William HAZELGROVE, you don't know how my husband, Don NEUEN, blurts his name out because being married to an Italian from the New York area who got paid to speak for 30 years, he never could get a word in edgewise, so he took to basically blurting out his name, what we refer to as radio puking, and therefore... And after that, he would just go back into the corner and let me continue with the interview.
See, we could have gone the entire segment without you saying that.
That's true, but there you go. Anyhow, you're behaving yourself.
I am.
This is the first time we've had author William HAZELGROVE on with us.
And I want to impress him.
Yes, you do. You'll hear him radio puke at some point here, I'm sure. There you go.
Don NEUEN, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. Boy, have we got an interesting segment coming up for you right now. We are traveling to Chicago. Back to you, Donna.
Yeah, land of corruption. Land of Rahm Emanuel.
That's right.
And it's been that way for decades. So, William, you're an author. You've written some great books. The Pitcher, Madam President. You've written books about, you've had novels as well. But your latest book is Al Capone and the 1933 World's Fair. So right off the bat, you live in Chicago, so obviously we have a connection there. What made you write this book, and what was the angle there that brought this, to fruition?
Okay. I was reading, actually, The Devil in the White City. I love that book. It's the 1893 fair, the Columbian Exposition. And I started paging through some newspapers, and I found out there was a second fair. 40 years later, Chicago did it again. Except this time, they had to get rid of Al Capone before they even had the fair. Otherwise, nobody would come to Chicago because it was so violent. We just had the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And also, it occurred in the worst year of the Great Depression. So these are the two things pushing back on the fair. And, of course, this fair is fascinating. It has Sally Rand, Judy Garland there, the first television. You had, believe it or not, microwave popcorn. They had the Sky Ride, which was a 625-foot cable car that went across the lagoon. So it's a fascinating fair in itself. But the fact that they had to get rid of Capone and they had to pull it off with absolutely no money really intrigued me.
Talk a little bit about the reason why Chicago is such it's just always been, I guess, the gateway to the West. There was a lot, as the West was being settled, there was a lot of corruption, and it just never seemed to really change. It still hasn't changed, really.
Well, yeah, Chicago, as you said, is the gateway to the West, and I think whenever you have a lot of commerce passing through in the area, you're going to get a lot of corruption. Obviously, what happened during Prohibition was, they said, okay, you can't drink anymore, all right, in 1929, and then what happened is somebody moved in to fill the need. Who was that? Al Capone. Al Capone famously said, you know what, I'm supplying a need for people, what people want. Down in the Loop, it's called bootlegging. Up on the North Shore, it's called hospitality. So take your pick. And so Capone saw this fulfilling his need, but he started making $1 million a week from the sale of beer and whiskey. So this created an incredible situation for graft, corruption, and basically Al Capone ran Chicago. It became a nation unto itself.
Back in the 80s, I was living in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I worked with a audio company that laid all of the audio cable for the World's Fair that came to Knoxville. I can't remember what year it was, 82, something like that. And I know that the little city of Knoxville, Tennessee, really tried to pull out all the stops to do exactly what we were just talking about a second, which is give the city a facelift, give the city for the entire world the illusion that it's someplace everybody wants to move to, and it's a stellar city. And they had, they didn't have the kind of work that was involved in trying to clean it up as you did they did in Chicago. But the mob ruled Chicago at that time, correct? That's safe to say.
Absolutely.
$1 million a day. God.
That's right. And, the big weapon of choice was the Thompson machine gun, which they called the Annihilator. General Thompson built it for World War I. Nobody really used it except the gangsters, and they loved it. And that was really the gun of choice. This is almost a terrorist weapon. They could just destroy cars, people, whatever with it. So, that image of the gangsters running on the running boards of the cars, going through with these Tommy guns, well, this was very true. And so Chicago was run by them. It got so bad that, the fathers of the city went to the president and said, we've lost control of our city. We need help. So what happened then? 6 guys got together. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Elliot Ness story, right? And the Untouchables.
Yep.
Well, that's simply not true.
Wow.
That was actually a guy named Oscar Fraley, who in 1957 met a drunk, and this drunk was Elliot Ness, who was an alcoholic at this point. And he said to him, hey, you got any stories, about that time in Prohibition? Ness gave him a 20-page manuscript that wasn't anything. Fraley, who was a sports writer, took off and wrote The Untouchables, made the whole thing up, sold it to television. Robert Stack starred in it, then sold it to Hollywood, sold 1 million copies of the book. Ness
just took the steam out of. You got to love The Untouchables.
Leave it to Oscar Madison to do something like that.
Yeah, really.
Right, exactly. Well, and it's a great story, and it really was. But the truth, it's just not true. What the truth is, there were 6 Chicago millionaires. They were called the Secret Six. They got together and hired a secret police force, and that's how they got Capone.
Oh, really?
Yep, absolutely. They were 6 very, very powerful men who realized, this is sort of interesting because they realized that the government had been bought off in Chicago. The mayor was owned lock, stock, and barrel by Capone. The police, the judges were all bought off. So these 6 men got together, created $1 million fund, and started hiring up their own detectives, own policemen. And what did they do that really brought Capone down? They had the first witness protection program, where they would put witnesses on a steamer, send them down to South America to wait, then bring them back to testify. This was the only time that they could get Capone because Capone couldn't get to these guys. And that's how they finally got him.
Wow.
Now, in my conversations with Denise Simon, who you've appeared on her show as well, the Denise Simon Experience, after I listened to your interview with her, she and I were talking about this. I got to tell you, you're like one of her favorite, if not favorite guests of all time. She would not close her mouth in talking about you. But that was one of the real fascinating things. This gave birth to the witness protection program, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The things we take for granted now, like here's what the Secret Six did. They set up their own speakeasy, so they could start gathering information. They had their own infiltrators. They set up their own gangsters to get into Capone's organization. Now, this stuff is running the mill now for police, but nobody had done this before. So, they started a fund to buy booze from Capone. Well, people in the DEA and stuff do this all the time with drugs. Well, again, none of this had occurred. But the Secret Six just, did all these innovative techniques to get Capone. Also, what they did is they studied how he made money. And they went after his bottling operation. They went after his stills. They started to put a crimp to the point that when Capone was finally put in jail, you know what he said? He said, it was the Secret Six that did me in. They took all the money out of the business. He didn't say it was Elliot Ness because that was just not true. Elliot Ness was just a prohibition agent. He was just one of the many. But the Secret Six took him down.
Now, are any of these Secret Six still alive? And if they are they still in the witness protection program? Were their lives ever threatened? Did it ever get kind of jiggy for them?
It amazingly, they were able to keep this secret till to today. Today, you can't say for sure who they are. We know Julius Rosenwald was one, who was the president of Sears. We also know a guy named Insull, who was a huge utilities magnate, was also one. Robert McCormick, who ran the Chicago Tribune, unofficially supported them with his paper and, kept, the pressure on Capone that way. And then there's Frank Loesch, who was of the Chicago Crime Commission. He thought to be one. A guy named Ingram was another one. So, these are guys who, they think we're in it. They're pretty sure was in it, but nobody can say for sure.
Well, it sounds like what they were doing is they were taking their billions and millions and trillions and whatever they had, and they were reinvesting it in a rather unconventional way to give the city of Chicago a serious facelift so that hopefully they'd benefit from the
That's right.
from the World's Fair.
World's Fair, but just down
That's
the road.
right. They knew that the World's Fair would never come off if Capone was still there. They knew nobody would come to Chicago. And they were right. And so, you could say it was for their own economic interests, that they wanted the city to be viable still, and they knew they had to get rid of them. And really what tricked that off was the 1929 St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Mm-hmm. That's what kicked them into action, because that was so heinous, it was splattered all over the world, and everybody knew about it. And from then on, they were after Capone.
Wow. It's amazing. First of all, let's take a quick minute here to tell folks how they can find. I know I've gone to Amazon and I can find all your works there. But where is your website? How can people find out what you're doing as well as purchase some of these books?
You can go to WilliamHazelgrove.com, to WilliamHazelgrove.com, or you can just put in my name on a search, and it'll pop up. You can put in Al Capone and 1933 World's Fair. It'll pop up that way. Again, you can find it through Books A Million, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all these places you can find the book.
Lay out some of the book titles. I mean, I've got them in front of me, but I'd rather hear them coming from the author here. Some of your favorites that you've written. If I'm not mistaken, you've got 10 or 12 of them that you've written. What are some of your favorites?
I'll go first to Madam President, The Secret Presidency of Edith Wilson. That's a very recent title, and that's basically about Edith Wilson, who took over the White House when Woodrow Wilson had a massive stroke in 1919. They hid him away, told the public he was just suffering from nervous exhaustion, and Edith ran the United States for 2 years from 1919 to 1921. So that's a very fascinating story because, it happened before women even had to vote. After that, there'd be Teddy Roosevelt, which was Fortune of President, how the Wild West created Teddy Roosevelt. And that's basically when Teddy Roosevelt's wife and mother died on the same day in 1883. He goes west to the Badlands for 3 years, comes back to barrel-chested Teddy Roosevelt we know. So that would be another one. Another book I have is called The Pitcher. That's a novel, and that is a very fascinating story of a broken-down World Series pitcher and a Mexican-American kid with a golden arm who he coaches to make the high school team. And that book did very well for me. Actually, I sold that to the movies.
Yeah, I was going to say, these books need to be movies.
That one's near and dear to me because as a guy that's now 56 years old, I played baseball up until I was 45. And that one intrigues me a lot. So does, quite frankly, and I want to ask you a question about the Edith Wilson book.
Yeah, Madam President.
Yeah, how instrumental in your research, because I can only imagine the amount of hours, months, years that you're investing in research for these books. How instrumental was Edith Wilson with the income tax?
In terms of the income tax, you mean in terms of passing that law?
Yep. Yep. Was she involved in that at all? I know it was 6 years earlier.
It was earlier because
that was actually on the books because they passed the income tax for World War I to fund it. Okay. Now, one thing she was involved in, all right, is the League of Nations. The League of Nations, as you recall, had Article X, which said basically if one country declares war on another country, every other country has to come to its aid. By the way, United Nations does not have Article X. Henry Cabot Lodge did not want it. Wilson has his stroke. Okay, he has his stroke. Edith is put into the middle of this fight. She and Lodge go head-to-head to try and get it. It does not go through. Okay, it never goes through. The United States turns inward, goes into a period of isolationism. Adolf Hitler starts to rearm in Germany through the 30s. You can make the case that this was the great failure of the Wilson administration because if we had been in the League of Nations, we might have stopped Adolf Hitler from rearming.
I'm not a big fan of Woodrow Wilson anyhow, so it's pretty.
Well, most conservatives aren't,
exactly.
and we're not really going to try to get into the politics of things during this interview because this is more about your art
but you can
than
look
it is.
Back.
I know,
back
but
at the history,
the bottom line is lots of conservatives don't have too many good things to say about Woodrow Wilson, which is why I kind of asked the question I did. How instrumental was Edith in the early years of his administration?
Right.
But,
exactly.
Donna, you were talking about something while we were on break prior to going to this interview that drew kind of an analogy between his latest book about Al Capone and the
Clintons, the latest crime family of Chicago.
Oh, right.
But yes, I mean, it really was the IRS and tax evasion that really brought him down. And truthfully, I mean, again, we don't really want to get political in this interview, but I'm going to come right out and say it. I think that's the only thing that's going to bring down Hillary Clinton because of the tax problems the Clinton Foundation is going to have. Same thing.
Well, right. I mean, I think that's a great parallel. And here's what's interesting about the whole conviction of Al Capone. Okay, they can't get him on anything, so they go after tax evasion. Now, in 1933 or 31, or 30 actually, this is crazy because nobody's even paying taxes. The income tax is on the books, but there's no enforcement. There's no IRS. It's almost optional for people. So when they went after him on this was very radical to go after him for not paying his taxes. Well, what happens? He goes in there, he pays off the jury, and they have a plea bargain all set in. Well, the judge gets the word from the president, don't accept the plea bargain. He doesn't accept it, and then they do a very strange thing. If you saw the movie, you know what happened to the Untouchables. They switched the jury at the last minute. All right, so the Capones used to paying off everybody, and everybody in Chicago's kind of in on it. But when they switched the jury, what they end up with? Farmers from downstate. And these farmers looked at Capone like he was the devil. Here he is sitting there wearing a ring on his finger that is more money than they'll see in a lifetime. So for the first time, Capone couldn't buy these guys off. In fact, it's worse than that. These guys hated Capone. And this is really the reason he ended up with an 11-year sentence for tax evasion. So getting back to Hillary Clinton, what you said basically is true. It's called the Capone prosecution. They used it against O.J. Simpson. You basically say, look, we can't get you for what we know you're really guilty for, but we're going to get you for something else. And so, like, think about O.J. They couldn't get him for killing that guy, but they got him for, holding up the guys for his baseball cards and threw him in the tank for 10 years. Same thing with Capone. Couldn't get him for all the murders, but they got him for tax evasion. So your point on Hillary is, yes, they'll never get her for probably the big things, but they can get it for something else.
But you know what? If they get a jury of deplorables, it sounds like the jury that Al Capone had.
Bring in the farmers.
That's a good point. Again, they said one newspaper man said the room smelled of cabbage when the new jury came in. These are guys in their coveralls. Okay, so basically, if you've ever been to Chicago, okay, in Illinois, Chicago is unto itself. The rest of Illinois is a lot of cornfields.
That's right.
So, and that's still very true, except for the suburbs that ring it. I mean, so there's Chicago and there's Illinois. So basically, they brought in all these farmers, and that's who got Capone.
Gotta love it.
Was there ever a point in history, let's go back to the 20s and 30s through present day, when and I don't mean to bash your city, okay?
Oh, sure.
Was there a time in history where Chicago was not corrupt?
I would probably say, maybe through the early 1890s, maybe in the Gilded Age, where, everything started to become for sale.
120 years ago.
yeah, if you go through there. But, I mean, there is this history of just, money talks. And so, it exists in Chicago. That exists. Now, saying that, I'm going to give you another little story here about the World's Fair. Sort of interesting segue. All right, there's Sally Rand. You've heard of her, the feather dancer, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Sally Rand was part of the 1933 World's Fair, but she could not get a job there. So what did she do? She got on a white horse. This is the opening night of the World's Fair of 1933. And the fair is on what's called Northerly Island. It's not actually it's actually on a man-made island pushed in there from the Chicago fire. It's all the debris from the Chicago fire. So they created this island. That's where the 1933 fair was held. Sally Rand gets a boat, takes a white horse, is on the back of it with just body paint on. She gets off the boat. They're having the opening ceremonies. She gallops through the entire World's Fair, up onto the stage in front of all these muckety-mucks. The horse rears up. They take her picture. She is now part of the Chicago World's Fair in 1933 because everybody thinks she's been hired to do this. Well, they immediately arrest her for indecency, but she becomes the number one financial draw, making $5,000 a week.
I cannot imagine the chafing that would have taken place on that.
Right? And she's doing it bareback.
Hey, so she's a good rider. Hey, we only have a couple minutes left. I want to talk about the picture, but just real quickly, what technology was introduced in inventions at that 1933 World's Fair besides her riding a horse with body paint?
Yeah, great question. Believe it or not, television was there. It was very crude, but people could actually see themselves on another image. Here's another big one. Long-distance phone calls. People could call anywhere in the nation. People were amazed that this could occur. People could call the coast. Here's another one for you. Microwave popcorn. General Electric was there. They had a whole building, and they would bombard kernels with microwaves, and people would see this pop. Again, to people who were born in the late 19th century, this was amazing. Same way as a sky ride. 625 feet up. It's basically a cable car. People had never been that high. Why? They'd never been in a plane. So they saw Chicago from the sky for the first time. So these things just amazed people.
My father was born in 1913, that fateful year, the first year of the income tax. I told him that after him, the country was going to hell in a handbasket. But when you think about it, people born in that era, what they saw through the 33 World's Fair, like you're saying, and then, of course, airplanes and everything else, it truly is amazing. And then Man on the Moon. 40, 50 years later.
Microwave popcorn is a mind blow for me to hear. Yeah. I don't even think I owned my first microwave until
Yeah.
the 80s.
I didn't have a color TV, let alone a black and white TV until the 70s or 80s.
That's right. Yeah, no, they had amazing. They had gaseous tubing there, which you and I know as fluorescent tubing, but they called it gaseous tubing, and they did all sorts of crazy things with it. And people never seen things like this before. You know, this was all very, very new technology. And it was called a century of progress, and that meant people were looking forward. They're saying, by the way, they had modern homes there, too, that had central air, central heat, and also a little port for a person's airplane. We don't have that yet, but we did get the central air and central heat.
Well, it's pretty unbelievable. We got the hoverboards from Back to the Future. That's starting pretty soon.
That's right.
How about go back to the Secret Six real quick? We've only got about a minute and a half here. Secret Six, were they able to come back and enjoy and reap the benefits of that World's Fair? Were they actually able to participate and be at it?
Yeah, they did. And the Secret Six is sort of had an interesting demise because they weren't a vigilante force, and they used coercion techniques that we would call torture and things like that to get to what they wanted. And after Capone was convicted, they continued their work, and things did get out of hand, and eventually they had to be disbanded because they were basically, a secret police force.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely, huh? When
pretty
you think
much,
about it.
yeah.
Hey, in 30 seconds, tell us about The Pitcher, your novel about the World Series.
It's basically based on an old broken-down World Series pitcher who, lives in a small home in Florida, and this kid lives across the street from him, doesn't have any money for lessons. This guy sits in his garage drinking beer the whole time, and the kid's mother comes over and says, look, we don't have any money for lessons. Can you help us? Can you coach my kid? First he says no, then he finally says yes, and this allows him to kind of move on with his life. At the same time, he coaches his kid to make the high school team, which is his dream. So it's really about what you do is when a dream is all you have.
Wow, that's just great.
Any particular picture that you modeled that after that you can share with us, like maybe John Rocker?
More like Mickey Lolich.
Mickey Lolich, Detroit Tigers.
Wow, very good, honey. I'm impressed.
Are you impressed with that?
I'm impressed, very much.
What was his number, 31?
I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, are you even more impressed, Fiducia?
I'm seriously impressed. Yeah.
Al Kaline. You want me to throw a few more out at you?
That's
Ron Santo.
Okay.
Well, he's from the Cubs. Ernie Banks.
Him I know. I know Ron Say, but he wasn't a pitcher.
What is Ernie Banks' nickname, real quick? Mr. Baseball? Was it Mr. Baseball?
I think it was Mr. Baseball, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Wow. Ernie Banks, what a legend. I'm impressing myself at this point.
Don is vying for a job at ESPN now.
Not really. Hey, let's do the website one more time so that we can get people over there to buy some of these books from you.
Sure. It's WilliamHazelgrove.com, WilliamHazelgrove.com. You just put my name in there and it'll pop right up. Or you can, again, go to Amazon. It's right there. Or Barnes & Noble. It's right there. You can get it. It has an audio book as well, and there's an e-book as well, so, whatever your preference.
Any way they can get autographed books?
Yes. You could email me through my website. Just give me shoot me an email, and we can work that out.
Excellent.
We can figure out how I can ship you one.
Great.
Excellent.
And the picture could be a movie, huh? It's going to be a movie?
Yes, actually, they did actually buy the rights, so it's up to them now to make it. I'm all done. They paid me off, so.
Awesome. All right, that's William Hazelgrove. That's HAZELGROVE. Folks, find him at WilliamHazelgrove.com. Some great books, a wonderful author, and William, we will definitely have you back on again. Thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And coming up next, we'll be talking about taxes with none other than Tom Del Beccaro. It's coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you these two 24/7 streams of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. Talk America Radio is a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. Please visit talkamericaradio.us and click the Support Us button. You can contribute monthly or send us a one-time amount. We'll put it to good use continuing to share the American voice. Thank you.
This is Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience. When I'm not debating with Donna Fiducia about politics, I listen to Cowboy Logic Radio. Why, you ask? Because outside of my blog, founderscode.com, and my own radio show, the Denise Simon Experience, Cowboy Logic is by far the most entertaining and informative radio show on planet Earth. Plus, Don makes me feel guilty if I don't listen to his radio show every week.
Hey folks, this is AJ Gaynor, host of Blow and Smoke on the Talk America Radio Network. We know the mainstream media has a narrative they're pushing. On my show, Blow and Smoke, we challenge that narrative, sometimes with simple facts, other times with instinctive logic, but always with truthful, honest debate. I believe the perspective I provide my listeners is indeed unique. Tune in to Blow and Smoke with yours truly, AJ Gaynor, on the Talk America Radio Network and at talkamericaradio.us.
Chris X Radio, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern, on the Talk America Radio Network.
Congressman Alan West joining us.
Well, thanks so much, Chris.
We're talking with Brigitte Gabrielle.
Oh, Chris, I am delighted to be with you.
Ted Nugent is here.
My pleasure, and congratulations with your show. I'm proud to be on it with you, Chris.
Listen to Chris X Radio, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern, right here on the Talk America Radio Network.
Hi, this is Tom Del Beccaro, author, lawyer, Forbes contributor, and former head of the California Republican Party. I'm also a former U.S. Senate candidate from the great state of California. And ladies and gentlemen, I feel compelled to tell you that Don NEUEN, yes, Don NEUEN, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, is my favorite talk radio show host on the planet Earth. Man, I got that out without laughing.
Dude, look, read it. Just read it like I have it written.
Not Rush Limbaugh. Okay, Don, calm down. Not Rush Limbaugh, not Sean Hannity, not Mark Levin. I'm not saying not Laura Ingraham. What do you
say? Read it like I have it written.
But Don NEUEN. You can catch Don NEUEN, the world's greatest, most talented, most well-articulated, most passionate, highly educated, and mind-stimulating talk show host on the entire surface of the earth every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on Talk America Radio.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3.
Hey, everybody, they're back on again.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts, when their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glare. Back when the West was really wild, Cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me be the first to welcome you back to the final and riveting Cleanup Batters segment here on Cowboy Logic Radio. Donna, we're bringing in the Big Poppy.
Yes, that would be the cleanup batter. One.
You called me Big Poppy? You can't call me Big Poppy. And
yes,
Donna,
you can.
who was that person? I didn't even get an introduction. Who was that guy?
Oh, that's right. Are you a Mets fan or a Yankees fan?
Oh, a Mets fan.
Mets fan? Oh, okay.
That's
well,
it.
better.
I'm gonna have to kneel, and if I'm gonna be abused like this before a game.
Don't you dare! Not on my radio show. You don't. I'm talking about one Tom Del Beccaro, folks.
I still don't even know who that other voice is. I need to.
I'm Don NEUEN. Tom Del Beccaro, back to you, Donna.
Tom, you do know I'm a Red Sox fan.
I know that, you know, every person is allowed to do one morally decrepit thing in their life.
I like the Mets. I do like the Mets. I hate the Yankees. I do like the Mets. That's for sure. I do like the Mets. And when I worked at New York radio, the Yankees were very good to us. So I really
I have to tell both of you that this is absolutely fascinating. But can we move on to something of substance? Why don't you introduce Tom Del Beccaro, the great Tom Del Beccaro.
Big Poppy.
The Big Poppy. Why don't you just call me a Dodger fan and get it over with?
Yeah, really.
I was asked once if I could be a Red Sox fan or a Democrat. You know what I said? I said I could go to the woods of Mississippi and be a Democrat and hide.
There you go.
So let me take. I'm going to take that you're not a big Red Sox fan, eh?
Or you don't bleed Dodger blue either, even though you're in the great state of California.
Yeah, but he's up there with the San Francisco Giants.
He's in the great state of California that is slowly deteriorating.
I'm going to tell you somebody that's an over-the-top baseball and especially San Francisco Giant fan. Tom, do you know who I'm going to mention?
Who?
This is fascinating.
Myra
Taylor. The one who always posts
She helps us with my brand new website.
Yes.
Fully updated, politicalvanguard.com.
Yes. That's right. Myra Taylor, ladies and gentlemen, helps Tom Del Beccaro with politicalvanguard.com.
As does Denise Simon.
Now, I'm going to try to intro Tom without having any notes, okay? Donna, you've got your little notes there in front of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to welcome to the show Tom Del Beccaro. Tom Del Beccaro is a practicing lawyer out of the San Francisco Bay Area, up near Walnut Creek, if I'm not mistaken. That's where the rich people live. Now... he is also the former head of the California Republican Party. And that means that he knows a lot more about a lot of stuff than we do. He's an author. He's a Forbes contributor. He's a member of the Talk America Radio Kitchen Cabinet, which we are absolutely honored that he is on. He's also a tax guru, despite the fact that he's not a CPA. He works with people like Larry Kudlow and Stephen Forbes.
Steve Forbes, too.
Yeah, let me do this. I'm doing damn good for not having any notes, right?
Keep going.
Okay. And but
you know what? I'm just a volunteer like everyone else. We're getting tax reform. The House is finally doing this. You know, they've been working together, the House, the Senate, and the White House now since May. So that way they would all be on the same page instead of the way Obamacare rolled out. I think we're going to get tax reform this year, despite the ridiculous things that go on in Washington, including the distractions. I think this is going to happen. They need to do this, and it'll be great for the country.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell, Tom Del Beccaro is champing at getting to the interview, champing at the bit, because I haven't even finished. He was also a United States senatorial candidate last year. We threw all of our weight and our power, for lack of a better word, our efforts behind getting him elected in a state that, quite frankly, has not had conservative representation in the Senate for nearly a quarter of a decade. And he lost to...
a quarter of a century.
Quarter of a century, I'm sorry, 25, about 23 and a half years,
Reagan
if I'm not
was
mistaken.
Pretty much the last decent Republican.
But here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. The cards were stacked against him because of some bogus rule out in California where only the top two move on from a primary. You don't get one from the Democrat Party and one from the Republican Party. So Tom ranked number 3rd in the field behind Kamala Harris.
I did until $1 million by a Republican was spent against me. Forget about me.
Was that the schmuck in the little Mr. Rogers sweater?
The bow tie, yeah.
Bow tie boy.
But
and the idiots, Loretta Sanchez.
If California had half a brain in their butt, Tom would be there and not Kamala Harris. That's the bottom line.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. So
now wait a minute, Donna. Tom, no notes. That was strictly ad lib. How did you like that intro?
I'm Don NEUEN.
There you go. All right, Tom, seriously, you just got back from Washington, D.C. He's sending me all these pictures in the White House and, having all these dinners and hobnobbing with all these people. You met with Stephen Moore. You met with Larry Kudlow. You were there to talk about tax reform. Tell us what is going to happen.
Well, look, the House bill, I think, will be voted on within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and you are going to see a simplification. You're going to see, and that's what you need. The more complex, we spend, over 6 billion hours a year in compliance hours trying to figure out taxes. That's 100% wasted, unproductive time for everyone who has to go through it, except for the accountants and the CPAs. That drains from the economy. So you want a simpler code. We're going to get a simpler code. That's a big deal in and of itself to have a simpler code. We're going to have a reduction in rates. We've had 4 major tax reforms in our history. in the 20s, the 60s, the 80s, and just after in 2005. All 4 times after the simplification or the reduction in rates, the economy did better, and we got more revenues. There were 61% higher revenues in the 20s, 62% in the 60s after the tax cuts, 98% after Reagan, and above 30% after Bush. All of what happened is a very simple thing. And I did this big Facebook Live thing last Saturday out of Ramona, California. And it's a very simple thing going on here, which is the more something costs, the less of it you get. Bentleys don't sell as much as Fords because Fords cost less. If they were sitting side by side, everyone would take the Bentley. But because Ford's much cheaper, the less of something you get more, the more expensive you get less. That applies to jobs and income. The more you make income expensive, and that's what a tax is, an expensive making income, the less of it you get. And so we need to put income on sale. And that's what we're going to do when we lower rates. If you lower the rates and make it easier to make money or more profitable to make money, literally, you get a burst of economic activity, and that's why revenues always go up, because the economy is expanding. The goal of the tax code should be to not interfere with the economy and to raise revenue, not to be a political bludgeon or a social engineering project where somebody in Washington decides what income's good and what income is bad.
Very well said, Tom Del Beccaro. And I watched your Facebook Live last Saturday when you were down in SD, if I'm not mistaken. And I encourage all of you to find Tom Del Beccaro on Facebook. But equally as important, please visit his website, politicalvanguard.com. He's got excellent contributors. He's got cutting-edge information that's, quite frankly, way ahead of the curve. He vets all articles that go on that, if I'm not mistaken, Tom.
I do. I have. We had the new startup, and we have lots of them. We have Denise Simon on. We do newsmaker interviews. We're about to do a newsmaker interview we're going to publish with General Paul Vallely, who, by the way, I got to know because of you. We're going to, Denise regularly writes. She'll have a new op-ed out tomorrow on the whole Russian thing. So it's a great site. I appreciate that. But going back to tax reform, it's a pretty simple concept. If the more money taken away from you, the less you can spend. The more money taken away from the private sector, the less it can function. It's as simple as that. Now, all the economists want to tell you it's so difficult if you cut rates or if you do this or you cost government money, it'll be bad for the economy. No. If you take too much out of the private sector, it weakens. That's pretty simple.
That doesn't work for the government, though. You take money away from the government, maybe they might actually work better. I think we need to have this tax reform along with huge cuts in the government. To me, you could take 10% off across the board and you wouldn't even notice it.
Yeah, unquestionably. We've got to get spending down.
The only problem, Tom, the only problem with Donna's concept there of taking 10% cut across the board is that then those of us in the private sector would have to hire these lazy schmucks from the government that like to sit around and do nothing. But I digress. Go ahead. I'll step back away from that.
I thought you were going to say, I'm not in favor of across-the-board cuts, because that implies that all government is of the same value, which isn't true. There's a lot of waste in programs, some more than others. And obviously, I believe we should have national defense over some other issues. But anyway, the point is that the more you take, just think of the private sector and the government sector as two plants with flowers, side by side. And you had a gallon of water for each of them per week. If you suddenly decided to put 1.5 gallons in the government plant and take that half gallon away from the private sector plant, does anyone think the private sector plant would do as well? Of course not. So why do they think when you take away more and more money, and now government is 40% of the economy when it comes, approximately 40% of the economy. Why does anyone think that's not hurting the private sector? Why do they think it's better in the government sector? Because they do something better? I'm unaware of anything that government does incredibly well. Now, look, they defend us. True. But that doesn't mean that they're proficient in spending money. There are things we have to get taxed for because the government has to do, but that doesn't mean they're brilliant at it. And they're not brilliant at a lot of things. They're even bad at building roads these days. Come to California, the roads are awful. So we need to actually leave money in the private sector. You hear these Republicans and others, Democrats, we have to pay for the cuts. No. If you're going to start a business, let's say you wanted to get a restaurant. You go into deficit to start it. That's the whole point. Because you can't start it without going into deficit. Then you put money in, you borrow money, you do things. You take on debt, or you give up your cash, and then the business starts, and then it creates profits, and in time you make money. It's the same thing with the tax cut.
If you do a good job. If you do a good job. And that's something where the private sector doesn't have the luxury that the federal government or a state government does.
Take the risk.
The federal government and the state governments and local governments can do crappy jobs and they still get paid to do their jobs. Where in the private sector, like in your law firm, if you don't win cases, if you don't do a good job, you don't have any business. The federal government sits around and they've got this perpetual revenue income coming into them. And I just have a problem with it.
It's all true. But my point is, initially what happens, the history of tax reform and tax cuts is, in the first month or the first year, it is true that the federal government doesn't get as much revenues. But take the example of the 1920s. The income tax code came in 1913. The top rate was 7%. The Democrats in Congress moved it to 77% 5 years later. World War I came to an end. They left the tax rates. Shock of shocks. We went into a really bad recession. Now, Coolidge said, what happened was Coolidge's Treasury Secretary, Mellon, said, all the money's, there's a huge amount of money in tax-free bonds, because they don't want to take the risk because they don't think they're going to make any money because of the 77% rate. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut that rate to 25. And everybody said, if you do that, the government will get less money. And he said, no, it won't, because people will stop putting money in bonds and put it into the market. And so what you found was, initially, when they cut the rates to 25, the government receipts weren't at the same rate. But you know what happened within a year? The economy in 1923 grew at, you ready? Guess the rate. It's growing at 40%. 2% now. No, come on.
It's growing at 3% now, right?
6%.
Yeah, 10%.
No, it grew at 2%. It's growing less than 2%. Well, it's 3% now, but 2% during the last decade. No, it grew at 11%.
2%.
Yeah, 11%.
It grew at 11% in 1923. 11 point something. You know why?
Well, I was close. I said 6%.
Well,
I know, and then somebody said 10. But what happens is people change their behavior, and this pent-up demand to do things is realized. It's just like if Macy's declares a sale on Friday, their revenues on Thursday aren't very good, but their Friday revenues are. And that's what happens. And so what you're going to see if we do tax reform, and you mentioned my friend Larry Kudlow, who should have some major job. He should be head of the Fed if I had my choice, or Steve Forbes. But what you're going to find is right now the markets, Larry will tell you that the markets are anticipating the cut. But what's going to happen when it actually becomes real is there's pent-up demand. The head of FedEx says he'll buy 100 planes if they fix the tax code. This pent-up demand will be realized, and you're going to get a burst of activity next year, and it'll be good for everyone. And I'll stop there, but I need to talk to people about this insanity of the left saying it won't result in higher wages. So let me know when you want to talk.
Okay, we'll do that in just a second. And you're talking about this pent-up demand, which I think is already being anticipated because the market just continually hits new all-time highs. It's unbelievable. Correct. If it doesn't work, we're going to have a huge crash, which is hopefully not going to happen.
I don't think it's going to be huge. There will be a correction.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say the word huge.
Okay, so tell us about what you know.
Wait a minute. I want to touch on the Fed situation real quick, Tom. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Tom Del Beccaro with us, politicalvanguard.com. Please check it out as quickly as you possibly can. Tom, I know that Steve Forbes and Donald Trump know each other. They may be very good friends. Am I correct in that assumption?
They certainly know each other, and Steve Forbes, by the way, is an absolute prince.
Yes,
I agree.
In fact, they live right around the corner from each other.
Why is Trump not tapping on his brilliance for the Fed?
Well, the short history of that is usually, and I'm not saying it's correct, the Federal Reserve chairmen come from within the Federal Reserve System. And you can say good, bad, or indifferent. Look, I'll tell you why I love Steve Forbes. Steve Forbes is a human encyclopedia in addition to understanding the limits of government. Steve's got a great example of what you should care about when it comes to money. What you want government to do is to create a stable money supply so that the value of money is consistent. And the way Steve explains it, which is great, is he says, imagine if you looked at money like you do time. Would you possibly want 1 week where time was only 23 hours a week, and then the next week it was 27 hours? That would throw things into havoc. Well, if you play too much with the value of money, the same sort of thing occurs. But when money becomes stable, people get out of the money speculation market, and it creates more stability for investments, because now fluctuating currencies is a reduced concern, and they can make investments on what they think will be the actual value of the enterprise or what they're about to do. That's what we need to do when it comes to the next Fed chairman, is find someone who believes like Steve Forbes. Yeah,
absolutely. That the stable monetary environment and a stable
Janet Yellen.
Yeah, really. And a stable, you're so bad. A stable country in general where we're defended and we don't have to worry about whether or not we're going to get attacked and if our power grid is vulnerable. I think those are the only two things the government really needs to be doing at this point. Then get out of the way and allow the people to thrive. And that always works. The middle class is getting killed with all this stuff.
It is. And can we now talk about this insanity of the left saying that the tax reductions won't result in higher wages?
Right.
You're the guest, buddy. You can talk about you can talk about me if you want to.
Okay, but I want to talk about something that the listeners remotely care about. Okay.
Oh, Bactine is needed.
The left says if corporations cut taxes, they won't result in higher wages. That is literal insanity. Okay, and there's a piece of Political Vanguard you can get on this. Now, when a corporation, let's say a corporation wakes up today and it has an assumption that based on the current tax system, it's going to have, let's just use an example, $100,000. But under the new tax system, it's going to have $120,000. Now, what can they do with that additional $20,000? Generally, they spend, save, or invest. There's some version of the three of those. If they spend, what do they spend it on? They may spend it on new employees. They may spend it on higher wages, or they may buy something. FedEx wants to buy 100 planes. If they save it, they put it in a bank, and a bank lends it out, right? So save, invest. They could do dividends, which they give money away. All of those things mean that they are using the money or someone else is using it. Now, a good deal of those things does not include does not include paying higher wages to their own employees. Now, the left says that's a bad thing. They should require that. But why should they require it? Take FedEx. FedEx's most pressing need is upgraded planes. It would be dumb for them in that situation, or take a company that needs a new roof. It would be dumb not to replace the roof or the planes if that's your business need. And this is where the left lie gets exposed. If FedEx buys 100 planes, that means Boeing people need to be hired. So the question isn't whether tax reform, which leaves more money in the pocket of corporations, will result in higher wages. It will result in higher wages. The only question is for which employees, at which location, for which companies, and when. Because corporations don't burn their money and make it disappear. They put it to work always, even if it's saved, because that means bank can lend it out, even if it's paid in a dividend, because that means individuals then can go out and buy and support a local store, and their wages or jobs will be improved. It's insanity to say that it doesn't result sooner or later in higher wages to someone.
So trickle down does work.
Tom Del Beccaro, we've only got a minute left, but I have to do a hat tip to you. For probably 3 or 4 years now, however long you've been joining us on Cowboy Logic Radio, you have a wonderful way of explaining things. So not only people that are interested, that kind of can wrap their head around this stuff, can figure it out, but you speak so Democrats can understand you. And I think that's probably because you've lived in California so long. Tom, we got about 30 seconds left. Please share with the listeners everything you can in 30 seconds about Political Vanguard, your books, your whole world, whatever you want to talk about.
PoliticalVanguard.com, that's really the hub right now. You can get my Forbes articles, you can get the Divided Era, you can get great contributors like Denise Simon. So I appreciate you guys having me back on. We need to support it. If you're in California, go to CAforTaxRelief.org and sign the White House petition supporting tax reform. Thanks, you guys.
That's cool.
Yep, we love you, brother.
Tom Del Beccaro, folks. His book, The Divided Era, The New Conservative Paradigm, was his older book. Again, he's a Weekly Standard, Breitbart, Daily Caller, Forbes contributor, all those. And you can find him again at politicalvanguard.com. Tom, again, thanks so much. And I like to close with the saying of the week by one of my favorite thinkers and politicians, Winston Churchill. No. Oh. Winston Churchill. Quote, "The fascists of the future will call themselves anti-fascists." Does that ring a bell, folks? Have a great week. We will see you next Tuesday. Find us at cowboylogic.us, and God bless America.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance, yes. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.